Josh here with Top Score Tutor. As always, thanks for tuning in. In this video, we're going to look at specific question types on Section 1 Reading Comprehension. So let's get started. So now that we've read the blurb, we've identified the passage that we want to attempt. We've attacked the passage. Now we have a good understanding, a general good understanding, main idea of what the passage is about. Now it's time to obviously get to the questions. So you want to choose the questions that you want to start with first. And it's always important to do the specific question types first. So let's take a look at what that looks like. So the majority of questions for each reading comprehension passage are specific question types. That means that the answer is found in one specific part of the passage. That's why we don't try to understand and fully read the passage, because the answers are designed to come back and found in one specific part of the passage. For these question types, you do not need to understand the entire passage as a whole to answer those questions. So again, a specific question, it's found in one specific part of the passage, and you ask yourself, do I need to understand the entire passage to understand what this one specific part of the passage is saying? Do I need to understand the entire passage to answer this one specific question? If the answer is no, then it's probably a specific question type. So specific questions are commonly identified by having a line reference, or if they don't have a line reference, then you use a keyword, which we'll get to in a minute. It's really important that once you find that specific part of the passage where the answer is, which I'm going to teach you how to do, you want to always read a few lines above and below the key term or the line reference. You always want to understand the context of that specific part of the passage. So let's look at some examples. So I'm on practice test 3, section 1, question number 2 for my first example. The first thing that we want to do is identify if it's a specific question type. So let's read the question. In line 2, turn most nearly means. It's in line 2. What's the question that we ask ourselves, guys, to know if it's a specific question? I had just said it previously. What do we ask ourselves? Do we need to understand the entire passage to know what it says in line 2? No, we just need to understand the area around line 2. So we can safely say it's a specific question type. The next strategy that we do is we rephrase the question. We rephrase the question. The questions on the SAT are written a lot more difficult and confusing than they need to be. So let's rephrase it. Let's summarize it into a way that we can better understand and better remember the question. So in line 2, turn most nearly means we don't talk like that. Nobody talks like that. So how can we rephrase this question? What they're really asking is turn most nearly means. That's the key part of the question. I can remember that I got to go to line 2. I don't need to say that in my head. I'll know to go back to line 2. Turn most nearly means. Turn most nearly means. Turn most nearly means. Another way to say it, even easier, is what does turn mean? That's so much easier in my head to say than in line 2, turn most nearly means. In line 2, turn most nearly means. What does turn mean? What does turn mean? Okay, so we've rephrased the question. Now we can better understand the question. The next thing that's super important to do, guys, is to cover the answer choices. The answer, do not go right to the answer choices. The answer choices are designed to confuse you. What we want to do is we want to go to line 2 and come up with our own answer first as what does turn mean. Once we have our answer, then we're going to come back to the answer choices and see which one matches the answer we came up with. So What does turn mean? Line 2, let's go. So line 2 is right around here. I found my word turn. And what did I say we do, guys, once we find that key word or line reference? We read a line or two above, we read a line or two below. You got to understand the entire area that it's found. So what does turn mean in this sentence? I want to challenge you to press pause, read this sentence, and come up with your own word for turn as it's used in this sentence. And then let's compare notes. Press play and then let's compare notes. Okay, so Lady Carlotta stepped out onto the platform of the small wayside station and took a turn or two up and down its uninteresting length. So there's some key parts here, guys. So we know the wayside station is small. Sorry, let me fix that. We know the wayside station is small, and she took a turn or two up and down its uninteresting length. So if something has an uninteresting length, it's probably small. So there's that word small again. So she stepped out on the platform of the small wayside station and took a turn or two up and down its uninteresting length, its small length. So what did she took a what up and down its uninteresting length? What's something you would probably do if you were at a train station and it involved going up and down the length of the train station? What's a word that you would come up with? Let's go with walk, a walk, steps, or something along those lines. That's my own answer that I want to come up with, steps. She took a step or two up and down. So let me write down my own summarized answer. A step, a walk. That's my own answer that I came up with. Now, let's uncover the answer choices and see which one of these matches what we came up with. So, course correction. That doesn't match step or walk. A course correction. Nothing about she corrected her course. That doesn't match what we came up with. A short walk. Short, small wayside station, uninteresting length, a short walk. Let's definitely hang on to that. A change in rotation, no. And a slight movement. Slight movement, slight is like kind of small. That's not bad. I guess we could kind of hang on to that. Like she did like a slight movement, like a turn or two up and down the wayside station. So she looked up, she looked down. That's possible. I'm not going to be so quick to delete that, but I'm going to go with choice C as my answer because that's closer to the answer we came up with. And when we plug that in, it fits that sentence better. So short walk is the correct answer. Let's look at another one. We're going to look at question number 26 on practice test 3, section 1. All right, guys, what's the first thing that we need to do? Can you remember already? Is this a specific question? If so, how do you know whether or not it's a specific question? So it is a specific question because we have a line reference. After Ken Dial had his aha moment, do we need to understand the entire passage to know what it says on line 41? No. This is a specific question. The answer is going to be found in one specific part of the passage. So we can label it specific. What's the next strategy that we do, guys? We've identified a specific. What's the next thing that we do? After Ken Dial had his aha moment, we're going to rephrase the question. How can we put this into easier words that understand? After Ken Dial had his aha moment, After Ken Dial had his aha moment, Not the longest question, but still a little bit long, a little bit weird to say in my head. So let's rephrase the question. After his aha moment, That's the key point of that question. After his aha moment, I don't need to remember Ken Dial. I'll know when I see in the passage. So another way to put this is, what happened after aha moment? So either or is fine, guys. There's no right or wrong answer. The main thing is to just summarize the question. So what happened after his aha moment? Okay, we've rephrased the question. Now what do we do, guys? We got to cover the answer choices. We do not go right to the answer choices. We cover the answer choices. We do not want to look at them. We want to go to line 41, read, and come up with our own answer on what happened after his aha moment. Okay, so we have the aha moment. We just read that one little part of the line? No, we got to read one or two above, one or two below. So what happened after his aha moment? So I should probably read after his aha moment. The birds were using their wings and legs cooperatively. Okay, so that's what happened after his aha moment. The birds were using their wings and their legs cooperatively. If you were to go to uncover the answer choices, you would see there is no answer choice that even remotely says the birds were using their wings and legs cooperatively. So if that's the case, you got to come back and continue reading. So let's continue reading, because clearly that's not one of the answer choices. It's a good guess, but there's no answer choices close to that. Okay, so he worked with Terry, who has since gone on to study animal locomotion. Ken came up with a series of ingenious experiments. Okay, so he came up with some experiments. That's what happened after his aha moment. He went and he did some experiments. Filming the bird as they raced up textured ramps tilted at increasing angles. So he was doing these experiments and he was filming the birds as they raced up ramps at increasing angles. Okay, so he's filming the birds as they were racing up ramps, and the ramps were tilted at increasing angles. Okay, that's the next clear thing that happened after his aha moment. So now let me go to the answer choices and see if one of the answer choices match what we came up with. Filming the birds as they raced up ramps at increasing angles. That's what happened after his aha moment. I want to challenge you guys to press pause and see if you find the answer choice that matches the summary that we came up with. And then when you're ready, press play and we'll compare notes. Okay, guys, so we have our summarized answer. Let's remove each answer choice and do process of elimination. Let's see which answer choice matches what we came up with. Consulted with other researchers who had studied chukar partridges. Wait a sec, consulted with other researchers. He worked with Terry. That was the first part of that paragraph. He worked with Terry, who since went on to study animal locomotion, not chukar partridges. That's why it's so important to summarize our answer and understand what's going on, because this answer choice is a perfect trap answer, and the reading comprehension passages are full of those. Consulted with other researchers. He definitely did that, but that other researcher studied animal locomotion. That's what the passage said, not chukar partridges. So for that reason alone, choice D is wrong. And that's why it's important to slow down and take your time, because I guarantee you're going to say, wait, he worked with Terry, he consulted with other researchers. Yeah, that must be the right answer. Let me put that and hurry up and move on. Wait a second. You've got to make sure that the entire answer choice is fully supported by the passage. So this is a prime example of half right. The answer choice is only half right. Well, if the only half of it's right, then the entire answer choice is wrong. Let's look at the next one. Observed how birds dealt with gradually steeper inclines. Guys, look at the answer that we summarized together. Filming birds, observed how the birds dealt with gradually steeper inclines. Ramps at increasing angles. Does gradually steeper inclines sound like ramps at increasing angles? Yes. Those are the same thing. Choice C best matches the answer that we summarized on our own. Choice C is the correct answer. Clearly matches this right there. Look at B. B is another perfect trap answer of similar to choice D. Studied videos. Well, gee, filming birds is kind of like studying videos, right? We always justify that in our head. You could make that argument, but he was filming the birds or studying the videos of the birds racing up at ramps, not why the birds no longer hopped. So again, the first half of choice B, you're gonna, if you're not slowing down and pacing yourself, you say, wait, I remember filming birds, studying videos. Yeah, that's gotta be the right answer. You gotta make sure the entire answer choice is fully supported by the passage. Choice C is fully supported by the passage. Now, that's it for specific questions that have line references. But what about specific questions that don't have line references? Let's look at question number 8. So what's the first thing we do, guys? The strategy doesn't change. What's the first thing that we got to do? We got to determine whether it's a specific question. What do we ask ourselves to determine if it's a specific question? Do we have to read the entire passage to understand what the narrator implies is Mrs. Q's favorite form of education? The narrator implies that Mrs. Q favors a form of education that emphasizes what? Is that what the entire passage is going to be about? What type of education she prefers? Probably not. It's probably going to be in one specific part of the passage. So we're going to say this is a specific question type. What's the next thing that we do? We rephrase the question. The narrator implies that Mrs. Q favors a form of education that emphasizes, that's a mouthful. The narrator implies, no duh, the narrator implies. Mrs. Q favors a form of education. Mrs. Q favors a form of education. That's kind of the key part. What kind of education does she emphasize? So that's a good way we can rephrase this. What kind of education does Mrs. Q, always abbreviate, Mrs. Q emphasize? Or you know what, we'll do a better word than emphasize. How about like or prefer? We'll do prefer. What's easier to say in your head, guys? How easy is that? What kind of education does Mrs. Q prefer? What kind of education does Mrs. Q prefer? So much easier to say in your head. So what's the next thing that we do? We cross off the answer choices. We don't look, we cover the answer choices. So we have our rephrase question, but we don't have a line reference. Where do we go back into the passage to see where it talks about Mrs. Q and education? Those are the key words, Mrs. Q and education. Do we go back to the beginning of the passage from the very top and start reading the whole way down to try to see where it mentions Mrs. Q and education? Heck no. The answers go in order. The answers go in order. Super, super important for you to remember that. Save you so much time. The answers go in order. Where was question 6 found? Question 6 was found in line 55. So question number 7, 8, and 9 are going to be after line 55. So now that we know that, let's start at line 55 and continue reading, looking for our keywords dealing with Mrs. Q and education. So I want to challenge you. Find the area of the passage that it talks about Mrs. Q and the education she emphasizes, summarize your own answer, and then see if you can find an answer choice that matches your own summary that you came up with. Do process of elimination and see if you can come up with the right answer. So press pause, and then when you're ready, come back and we'll compare notes. So line 55, I'm looking for Mrs. Q and education. Mrs. Q, Mrs. Q, Mrs. Q, Mrs. Q. Nothing about Mrs. Q and education between lines 55 and there. So let me keep reading. I wish them not only to be taught, said Mrs. Q, but interested in what they learn. Not only taught, but interested in what they learn. That sounds, and Mrs. Q, there's literally the words Mrs. Q. That sounds like the type of education that Mrs. Q prefers. What type of education does she prefer? So interested in what they learn. But as always, let's read a few lines below where that key part of the answer is so we can understand the entire context. In their history lessons, for instance, you must try to make them feel that they are being introduced to the life stories of men and women who really lived, not merely committing a mass of names and dates to memories. So being introduced to the life stories, not merely committing a mass of names and dates. We all have had that teacher in high school where it's literally you just got to remember names and dates, and that's the entire test. That's not what Mrs. Q prefers. The type of education she prefers is she wants them to be interested in what they learn. It's literally in capital letters right there. Interested in what they learn, not names and dates. She wants them to be introduced to the life stories. Okay, I think we have our answer of the type of education that Mrs. Q prefers. So now let's go back and I'll just write it down real quick. Okay, so we said interested in what they learn. Interested, life stories, not just memorizing names and dates. Okay. So let's see what choice D is. Factual retention. That's the opposite answer. We literally just said not names, dates, and memorizing. So factual retention is an opposite answer choice. And you're probably gonna be like, factual retention, well, they mentioned memorizing names and dates. Yeah, that's gotta be the answer. Read carefully, not memorizing names and dates. Factual retention is a common, this type of answer choice is a common trap answer. It's the opposite of what the passage is actually says. Those test writers, they want to trap you in there. They want you to say, oh, I remember reading that, so it's got to be the answer. If it's mentioned in the story, it's got to be the answer. That's why you got to take your time and really focus. Artistic experimentation. No, there's nothing about artistic and experimenting. The last two is active engagement and traditional values. Active engagement is the right answer. Actively engaged in what they're learning. Learning the real life stories of the men and women who actually lived it. Choice B closest matches what we came up with in our own answer choice. Okay, the last question that we'll do is number 27. Okay, so I want to challenge you guys again. You know the strategies now, you know what you need to do. Press pause, rephrase, identify it as a specific question, rephrase the question, cover the answer choices, summarize your answer, and come back and see if you can get the correct answer all on your own. When you're ready, press play, and then we can compare notes. This question is a long one. The passage identifies which of the following as a factor that facilitated the baby Chukar's traction on the steep ramps. What's the question we ask ourselves to know whether or not it's a specific question type? Do you think we're going to have to understand the entire passage to know what's a factor that facilitated the baby Chukar's traction on steep ramps? This sounds like such a detailed knowledge specific question. We're going to have to find the answer in one specific part of the passage. What's the next thing that we do? We rephrase the question. And that really comes in handy on these longer worded questions. The passage identifies, of course the passage identifies. We know we're referring to the passage. Which of the following? I don't need to know that. A factor that facilitated the bird's traction on steep ramps. A factor that facilitated the bird's traction on steep ramps. That's the key part of the question. What facilitated the baby Chukar's traction on steep ramps? Baby Chukar. Let me just say birds to make it easier in my mind. What facilitated the bird's traction on steep ramps? For those of you that don't know what traction is like having grip. You know, if a car is driving and it's raining outside, it doesn't have very good traction on the road. The tires don't have traction on the road. So we've rephrased our question. What factor facilitated the bird's traction on steep ramps? What's the next thing that we do, guys? We got to cover our answer choices. Hide the answer choices. All right. Oh, looks like we don't have a line reference again. So do we go back to the beginning of the passage and start looking for our key words of baby Chukar and traction on steep ramps? No, the answers go in order. So let's look at the previous question. Oh, we already did the previous question. So the answer to line 20, the answer to question 27 is going to be immediately after, well, not immediately, it's going to be after the answer to question number 26. So let me go to where I found 26, and then from there, I'll start reading and looking for anything along the lines of baby Chukar, traction, and steep ramps. All right, so let me pick up where I left off with the previous question. As the incline increased, steep ramps, the partridges began to flap, but they angled their wings differently from birds in flight. They aimed their flapping down and backward, using the force not to lift, but to keep their feet firmly pressed against the ramp. Their feet firmly pressed against the ramp. What's the question again? What helped the birds traction on steep ramps? Traction, their grip on the steep ramps. Feet firmly pressed against the ramp. That sounds like traction if I've ever heard it. So what helped keep their feet firmly pressed against the ramp? They aimed their flapping down and backwards. And that's what they use to keep their feet firmly pressed against the ramp, to facilitate their traction on the steep ramp. So aim their flapping down and backwards. All right, we've summarized our answer. Aimed wings down and backwards. All right, let's find the answer choice that matches what we came up with. Their continual hopping motions, negative. The alternation of wing and foot movement, the position of their flapping wings, the alternation of their wing and foot movement. Our own answer choice that we summarized said nothing about foot movements. It said to keep their feet firmly pressed against the ramp, but what helped the feet against the ramp, which is what the question asking, is what helped facilitate that? And it was the alternation of their wings and their wings alone. So choice C is a good trap answer, but it's not the correct answer because it's certainly not better than B. B closest matches the answer that we summarized, the position of their flapping wings. They aimed their wings down and backward. That's the position of their flapping wings. Choice B is the best answer type, is the best answer choice. So that concludes this video. We looked at specific question types. Go ahead and proceed to the next video and we'll look at paired question types.